Askreddit thread. What is the hardest thing you've ever had to say no to? The first time I had to turn down meth after quitting. I had turned down offers to get meth. I had turned down invitations to places I knew meth would be. But this was the first time I was sitting there, right in front of me, with people using it and offering it. I had been clean for about 4 months at that point. I had been visiting the guy I was dating. We went upstairs to visit some friends in another apartment, and there it was. I said no, I went back downstairs, and then spent the next 2 hours sobbing because all I wanted to do was run back upstairs and say yes. But I didn't, and now it is 12 years later and I am still clean. It seems like something really hard. I have a hard time turning down double cheeseburgers or pizza. Couldn't imagine trying to turn down something like meth. Every day it's hard to say no to my brain when it tells me, I bet you and I could sleep for another 24 hours. Oh, I love being able to wake up whenever I want. A relationship with a man I love. His kids were mean to my son and boyfriend was not willing to rein his kids in. I broke up with him. We all still in love with him, but I had to protect my son. Now that seems like a hard thing to do. Good for you putting your son first. My mother married an abusive man, knowing how fucked up he was. He passed away in my early 20s. I still resent her for putting him ahead of my sister and I. I know he was good to her, and she loved him, but God, was he mean. $3.3 million. What? When my dad was diagnosed with cancer, he needed my wealthy aunt, his sister, to stay afloat. Thing is that my aunt hated my father ever since they were kids. My grandparents wanted 2 boys, and treated my aunt like shit for not being one. She never got over this and resented my dad for it. So when he was broke, unemployed, divorced, and dying, she was thrilled to loan him money in exchange for control over his own day-to-day life. The final thing she made him do to pay for his chemo and keep a roof over my head was to convert to her church. He was a lifelong atheist. He died about a week after beginning the conversion process. After his death, my aunt made an offer to my brother and me. She would give us each a trust fund of $3.3 million to be released to us at the age of 26. However, we had to move to Arizona to live with her, go to the schools that she selected, work jobs that she approves, not date, join her church, etc. The same leash she put on my father. She wanted to put us on at our most vulnerable time. We both told her no. I'd be a multi-millionaire today if I didn't, but I'd be the multi-millionaire who betrayed his father's memory. I'd do all that for a couple $1 million. That's great. I'm not trying to make light of your dad's death or what you went through, but really, better to die once than die every time you look in the mirror for the rest of your life. Sure. When I was 5, my grandmother was dying of cancer. I thought it was contagious, so when my mom asked me if I wanted to crawl into her bed and cuddle with her one last time, I freaked out and eventually said no. I remember the look of sadness on my grandmother's face. I wanted to say yes, but I was afraid I'd get her sickness. She died a few days later. I hope she understands I didn't think she was going to die, because I was fucking 5. Still wish I had said yes. Edit. I'm so happy I posted this and so many people could relate. Okay. Actually, let me keep reading. I took this burden of guilt so hard from kindergarten until 5th grade. I was an emotional wreck. Recently, I've been thinking about it a lot more recently, mid-20s. This is the first time I told anyone besides my mom. I feel so much better. And thank you for the gold. It makes crying at all the posts while at work so worth it. What? Oh, crying at all the posts while... Okay, so she was reading the replies at work. It took me a while to... I thought she literally meant, like, posts. Like, polls or shit. It's like, why would you be crying at polls? Just earlier this month, my daughter was born 3 months premature. When asked if I was going to see her in ICU, I had to say no for about 3 days as I was recovering from a cold. I was incredibly hard not to see that little girl, but I'm glad I did because so far so good and the baby's doing well. Suicide. Sometimes you have to convince yourself it's not time to give up yet. Good on you and keep doing what you're doing. Depression can be managed as long as you stay on top of it. I found myself stepping in front of a bus while drunk off my ass 4 a.m. on a rainy Tuesday. Thankfully, I wasn't able to judge the speed and distance well enough, and of course, an alert transit driver. And so I was just knocked on my ass pretty hard, and after that, I turned a lot of shit around in my life. Now I manage through healthy diet, 5 days a week in the gym, and having a social life to the extent I just got engaged last weekend. Suicide was a permanent solution to a temporary problem that I all along had the ability to fix. Kudos on you and keep kicking ass. Saying no to grandma's seconds is pretty hard, especially if you're Asian. Grandma, I'm full. What movie is that? Real life. I hate that movie. Depends on how sloppy. Dear God. My ex-husband, when he asked me to come back home after I left him. Similarly, I always have a hard time saying this word. My ex-wife, who is even hotter now than when we got together, texted me to try to get me to come over and sleep with her. Always jack off before replying to those texts, always. Must be difficult receiving the text in a supermarket or bank. Not me, but my penis said no to getting hard the first time I was about to bang my girlfriend. Quite the disappointment. Sounds like the softest no in the whole thread. A cigarette when I was quitting. Nicotine. There's a married chick in my med school class on an army scholarship, and her husband, who she met in the army, lives several states away. She's disciplined, gorgeous, and fit as fuck. But when she gets drunk, the discipline disappears, so I'm left with a gorgeous, fit as fuck woman stroking my ego and accidentally touching my cock through my jeans. It's always a struggle, but the image of her husband and his army issue 9mm chasing me down the street usually gives me the strength to say no. Usually you say, this is probably not going to be seen here, but here it goes anyway. I was a sophomore in college, and one day while driving home, I saw a very small puppy dodging traffic in our neighborhood. I stopped, picked up the puppy, and took him home with me. This was literally the cutest dog ever. It was a small breed, but we couldn't tell the exact breed or mixture of breeds. My roommate and their girlfriend all immediately loved him. There was a problem, though. We were in college and all had jobs, and our lease precluded us from having any pets, so I took care of the dog, named him Doppio, while we tried to find his owner. He wasn't microchipped, and he didn't have any tags, so it was tough. This lasted about 2 weeks, and during this time, Doppio fell in love with me. He couldn't stand to be in any room without me. He slept and cuddled next to my chest, and would cry all day until I came home, no matter who was home with him. I started to consider the possibility of keeping him, because he was the coolest dog ever. Well, one day, one of my roommate's girlfriends went for a run in the neighborhood and saw a lost dog sign for Doppio. Yeah, I was actually pretty devastated. I was beginning to think I could keep him, and I remember that was the first time I had cried in front of my girlfriend at the time. And as soon as I got home, I played with Doppio for the last time, then took him back home. The owners were so thankful. 2 hours later, I get a call from the owner. She had my number on her cell phone from when I called her responding to the flyer. She told me that Doppio hadn't left the front door and had been crying ever since I left. She told me that it was obvious that he loved me, and that if I wanted to keep him, I could. Obviously, I wanted nothing else but to go and get him back right away, but I told her no. It wouldn't be fair to Doppio with our busy schedules, and our lease wouldn't allow pets. That was by far the hardest thing I ever had to say no to. Man, you really know how to pull at those heartstrings. Wow, I don't think I'd be able to say no to a dog like that. I don't know, I want to say I could, but... Oh, dogs are the best. Right now, there is a Belgian waffle food truck sitting outside the office, and I'm inside listening to my coworkers grunt and moan in syrup ecstasy. Why aren't you going out there? Oh my god, that looks good. Oh, I want a Belgian waffle. That looks so good. My 13-year-old cat was a gift I got myself when she was a teeny little kitten to celebrate the fact that I had just kicked my emotionally and verbally abusive, just turned violent boyfriend out of our apartment without any help whatsoever. I just suddenly grew some metaphoric balls and told him I wasn't going to put up with him any longer. So even though I'm really a dog person, she's the most important pet I've ever had. She had been fighting kidney disease for 2 years, then she got hypothyroidism too. About a week after diagnosis, I woke up and she was obviously not going to make it much longer. She couldn't take a few steps up, followed over, and what very little movement she had left was spent trying to get away from me. This was a cat who would have a tantrum if I didn't carry her around when I got home and spoon her when I was laying down. Anyway, I took her to the vet and he told me he recommended putting her to sleep, but I could maybe get a few more weeks out of her if he put her on a drip to rehydrate her. Saying no to that was the hardest thing I've ever done. It's been over a month and I'm still broken. If she was trying to get away from you, she knew she was dying. Animals tried to die alone for the most part. You did the right thing. It was inevitable, and the condition hurt her. I don't want to hear stories about dead animals. When my mom was on life support, when the doctors asked me if we wanted her to stay like this, I had to say no for the whole family and her. I keep living asking myself, what if? All the doctors could not have been wrong, right? They gave her no chances. My dad had cancer, and over the course of a few years it spread from his colon to other areas throughout his body. He was first treated in the summer of 1999. In the summer of 2004, we were going to Disney World since he loved going there and he felt good enough to enjoy it. There were a few rough patches where he was really worn out, but he really had a great time. In November of 2004, he was in a care facility, essentially hospice. The cancer had spread too far throughout his body and there was no treatment. The hospital was a couple hours from where we were currently living, and one evening I decided that I wasn't going to drive there and visit him because my sister was planning on going the next day, so I decided to go with her. When we arrived at the hospital, we initially thought my dad was either sleeping or had just received a dose of pain meds. Turns out he had passed away and the nurses didn't even know. I don't know if I will ever get over the guilt of not going to visit him the last night that he was alive. It helps a little knowing that if I'd gone the previous night, my sister would have been alone and found him like that. So I'm thankful that we were there together for support. It's also likely that he wouldn't even realize that I was there since he was on so many pain meds he was rarely coherent. I just wish that I had one more chance to hold his hand. Fuck cancer, now I'm tearing up sitting at the office. A college student, I was driving home after a company-sponsored lecture. I participated and simply started stripping as we talked. Being on a busy city highway, I didn't notice till she nearly had her tits out. She was hot as hell, but I asked her to get dressed and told her my career meant more to me than acting on impulse. Always thinking about the money one more time. I love the career to a mentality fault, so much so that I always felt diminished in its wake, like a lesser human being without the logo I considered to be my family. Trust me, I wanted to eat her like ice cream cone, but I would never have brought shame to the company. Continuing my study abroad. I came from a poor family, so I always studied hard and hoped that I can help my family one day. I received an offer to study abroad, but the fees were just too much for my family. I really wanted to study abroad, but this was the hardest no to me. Sex with my friend's ex. They had just split up and she and I had been friends before they had started dating, so we started hanging out after the breakup. She was a gorgeous blonde bombshell with a great body and a fantastic personality. There were a few nights when we had a little too much to drink and things got interesting. I always found a reason or excuse to not go further because I was good friends with the guy she had been dating, and I didn't want to screw up either relationship. Glad I didn't do anything because they got back together, got married, and have 2 kids. I work with the guy every day and glad to still be friends with both of them. Finally, one of these that didn't end with, I never saw any of the parties again, and I could have in retrospect said yes with no repercussions. Continuing treatment for my elderly cat. I had to finally say goodbye. The drums lollipop at the bank. What? My mom stopped to withdraw some cash so she could pay the dentist to fill my cavities. Oh, the dum-dums. My ex-boyfriend of 4 years, who I was madly in love with, broke up with me. I was completely destroyed. I spent a month in a lot of pain, hiking by myself, contemplating my life. It became clear that while he might have cared about me to a degree, that he didn't love me the way I loved him, and that he was only with me to fulfill his insecurity and boredom. He didn't really like me for me. So when he came back and said he missed me, I had to face the man I was still totally in love with and tell him no, and walk away. I didn't know if I made the right choice, but it's been 2 years and it still hurts. Those pants really did make her look fat. I worked for a power company on the East Coast, USA, and had to take emergency outage calls during Hurricane Sandy. I was working 12 to 14-hour shifts, and this isn't my primary job at the company. At that point, I was an auditor, so I never interacted with customers. During and after the storm, we got lots of calls from people who were really, really angry that their power wasn't restored. Which I understand, but there's only so much I could do. I had a call from an older woman who lost all the food in her fridge, and when she asked me if there was anything I could do to help her, I said no. She immediately started crying and asked me how she was going to survive. She was alone and didn't have anyone to help her, and was on government assistance, so she didn't have any money to buy more. I felt horrible. I still feel horrible, and this is a couple years ago. I could sit on the phone and get screamed at by customers all day without it really bothering me, but this call has really stuck with me. I referred her to the Red Cross hoping that they could help her. I really hope she got the help she needed. Food I really wanted, but was too full to eat. Damn. Goes from cutting a mom off life support to food. A while ago, I was at a party, and my crush was also there. I drove there by myself, so I was sober the whole night. She ends up getting pretty drunk and spending a lot of the night hanging around me for balance purposes. Eventually, she starts trying to mess around, ask me if I will make out with her and stuff. I told her that if she still feels the same way when she's sober, then we can mess around. I lucked out. She did still feel the same way sober. We've been together for 4 years now. Superficial and toxic relationships. Quality matters way more than quantity. This is until the quantity equals approximately 0. Just to clarify, guys, I'm not in this situation right now. I used to be, but I have been getting better, feeling better, and doing some stuff to help me get out of it. Stopped gaming, picked up fitness together with 2 new friends. Still, even if that were true, there is no reason to get nasty. If a person that actually still was in this situation got a PM saying the problem is you, no witch hunting intended, just trying to give advice, that might cause some problems for said person. Please be mindful when roaming the www. You don't know the story behind every person. A beer when I quit drinking. I had problems with moderation and self-control. Like hunt a beer down right when I woke up, problem with self-control. First day my roommates have a party, and I sure as hell live for drinking games like they do. I had like half a 30 rack and left a bottle of whiskey. Drank off-brand soda and felt the biggest dork while simultaneously saying no to every drink I saw. Rough. Fortunately, I handle myself quite fine now. Edit, if you're trying to take the same kind of steps, trust me, old duels really isn't bad. You look weird with one, you feel weird with one, but they help. Old Doles? Isn't that a non-alcoholic beverage? On a similar note, Beck sells a non-alcoholic version that isn't quite as obvious if you're worried about looking weird with Old Doles. I am sorry to all the Nigerian princes, but I have never replied to. I sell you iPhone 4. Man, my time to shine, and I'm late. In college, I was very good friends with the legit hottest woman I've ever known, who was a lesbian, and seriously not into guys at all. Her girlfriend was visiting for the weekend, and one night my friend drunkenly and awkwardly asked me if I'd be their third for a threesome. Somehow, 19-year-old me said no, I'd rather you not pick anyone else either. You're not into men, so don't do that just for her. And then went back to my room and sat in shock for a while. She thanked me the next morning. They talked about it and didn't do it at all. How the hell did you say no to that? This is the one I couldn't refuse. Being asked to marry a former boyfriend. I know it will have been the only chance I'll ever get, but he had too many issues with his ex-wife for me to want to risk it. ITT, guys turning down attractive / very attractive girls. Everyone in these stories is less attractive than we are all picturing them. She was a 1010 equals unwashed hobbit. Well, I just googled unwashed hobbit and returned the following. Well, that was interesting. An alcoholic who wants a drink. It is amazing how many manipulative tactics addicts develop. About 3 weeks ago, I gave birth to a little girl with no brain. They asked if I wanted to see her and hold her, and I said no. But now it's hard to know that I don't even know what my daughter looked like. Oh, that's sad. That's really tough. My wife is due in 2 months, and I can't even imagine the pain of being in that situation. I probably would have made the same decision as you. I almost cramped in my thigh. Sex with the girl I like. Putting a penis joke in an Askreddit thread. A 4-way. Turning down Xanax and morphine separate occasions. Edit for awareness. The video best describes how the experience feels. Pizza. I had the flu, so I was basically quarantined and sleeping all day. Heard my roommate come home after a party with 2 girls. I went into the kitchen to get some water and was proud of the 2 girls he was drunkenly flirting with. They were all smashed. I go back to bed, and a couple hours later, my dog is freaking out, barking at the sliding glass door. I look out and see a shadow at the door, and my dog jumps out of my bed, and I'm sort of terrified. The door opens, and it's one of the girls absolutely drenched from head to toe. She walks in rambling about how I'm a nice guy, whom she never met, and starts wandering around my room. I should preface, I sleep naked. She walks over to my bed and tries to get into bed with me and trying to kiss me. I say no and hop out the other side to throw shorts on. I then get her a towel and change of clothes and I escort her to the couch to sleep. Apparently, in her drunken stupor, she walked outside, fell into her pool, which is why she was wet. Thank God she didn't hurt herself. Though it wasn't hard to say no, since she was obviously out of her mind. She was very hot, so for that reason there may have been a slight initial hesitation. Damn it, I was trying not to read more threads about just say no to hot girls. Really attractive girl, blah blah blah. Let's see, had a bridesmaid try to seduce me. Yeah, let's not read that one. Sex with my wife's best friend when I was early 20s. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, ridiculously attractive girl. Sex with slightly over women. A threesome. Last day classes. Okay, this one doesn't look like one. In my last year of high school, on one of the last days of calculus class, I saw a copy of the final exam I'd be taking in a few days sitting in the recycling bin. On one hand, hey, a potentially free 100% on my calculus exam. But I already had a good grade in the course and was going to a nice university anyway, so I didn't want to risk it. Plus, cheating is wrong, etc., so I didn't end up touching it. Got 100% on the exam anyway. Fuck yeah, honesty. What a nerd. I mean, if you got 100% anyway, you probably didn't need to cheat. My long-lost African prince relative. We could have shared fame and fortune together if only I had given him my life savings. Let's see. I can't have an emotional relationship with you any longer, but I can't imagine you not in my life. Can we stay friends? 8 years of my life down the tubes. Encouragements to lie about my medical history in order to accept into the military. I once had a minor South African pop star ask me to go dance naked with her on a beach. That doesn't sound like a problem. I had to say no. I was bartending at a popular backpacker bar and was the only one working. I would have had to close the bar and kick out 30 or 40 drunk backpackers. 2 tipsy MILFs on a train. When I was 15 years old, they asked me if I wanted to get off the train and come play at their house. My pathetic former self was intimidated by the notion. I actually automatically said no without even thinking. To be honest, the saying no wasn't difficult, but dealing with the complete dark emptiness that swallowed me up as the train continued to depart and regretting my decision was. Alright.